Devin Haney survived a late scare to overcome Jorge Linares on points and retain his WBC lightweight world title. Yes, he is the lightweight world champion, whether you like it or not. This is After the Bell, Mirror Fighting's boxing show with me, Martin Domin, with Barry Jones and with Declan Taylor. Barry, let's get straight into it. Devin, he did seem to show a bit more last night. I said to Declan just off camera, he seems to never be able to win because everyone's always saying something about his performance, but he did jab very well early on and then brought it to Linares before surviving, as I said, that late scare.
Yeah, I thought he was massively dominant. It was 30 bucks a lot better. He was, I think, I think he's a very reactive fighter. So most of the times he'll box how he feels the opponent's dealing with him. And so I think with Linares, and I don't want to, he boxed great, did Devin Haney, but Linares looked like an old fighter last night. Just couldn't pull the trigger. To have to get that little step too close before he let his hands go. And because Haney realised that very quickly, that's when he was comfortable to stand in the pocket more and let his hands go, because he knew his reaction time was much faster than Linares, and he could let his shots go and always stay out of trouble. I think that's his ethos, is not to get hit. I think he's a massive. He looks like the sort of fighter who's obviously grown up watching Floyd Mayweather. And he's realised that is the way forward. Where you land your shots. You being elusive is more important than being aggressive. And he's had success. But last night I think he got the mix just right, and I think he looked at the fighter and sold himself a lot better to the wider public.
Was that a fight he needed, Declan, for that very reason, just to bring it a bit more out of him rather than having to continually just chase down opponents?
100%. That was the exact perfect opponent at the perfect time. And although it might not seem it, because he did have to dig in at the end, and that shot that hit him at the end of the 10th, he really wobbled, and actually it did. The 11th was not good for him because of it. And even though nobody wants to get hit hard and wobbled and stuff like that, but it's the perfect time for it to happen, because now he knows that he can do it. He knows that, okay, this is what it feels like when you've had your bell rung and then you need to go back out again and still do the business, because he was first minute or so of the 11th all over the place. His legs weren't under him. He was leaning in, and it was, but then he felt, it came back as the time ticked in. He just sort of got his senses back together, and he hung on. I think it was a perfect fight for him at that time, considering the strength of the division that he's in. He'd had this sort of very serene walk to the top, only because of how good he is. That's no disrespect to, the matchmaking or anything like that. Although, given how talented he is, he's just been a level above. But I mean, in the Gamboa fight, for instance, he kind of wasn't at the races. He was almost like he wasn't switched on a bit. Maybe he'd become a little bit complacent, and Gamboa had a little bit of success, particularly with the counter left hook, and Linares was clearly looking for that. But like Barry said, he just couldn't quite get it off. He's not the Linares of old, but I think it was the perfect sort of learning fight. I know what we're going to get onto, who he should fight next and how he's going to sort of get mixed up with that really hot division with all those young guys. But I wouldn't, and it's sacrilege to say, I wouldn't be against him having one more, a Richard Comey or someone like Javier Fortuna or someone like that. Another big, another step on, another really hard fight where he's going to have to do that again. And then I think he's ready. I mean, he's ready now to take on Ryan Garcia or Gervonta Davis or whoever it might be, or Teofimo Lopez. But I just feel like another one of them would be really good for him, given his age, because we do forget how young, what is he, 22 or something like that? The problem is, once he fights one of these top guys, then he has to just fight them forever. Then he can't step down again. So I would go for a Comey or a Fortuna or someone like that. And you just look at the WBC rankings. I mean, to be honest, the whole of lightweight is great at the moment. But I think we saw the value of that sort of a fight last night, and it wouldn't be the worst idea for him. And I can't believe I'm saying it, because we always moan about the best not fighting the best and stuff. But one more of them would be really good, because he learned a lot last night, but I feel like there's more to learn. And then he goes on, and it could be, it could be a big 10 years of Devin Haney in the boxing world.
Isn't it crazy that he's a world champion, yet we're still talking that he's not quite ready? I see him boxing, and you're totally right when you say, and I agree with everything you say. But we're saying that a couple more of those just below top tier level fights before he goes up against the ace, the the A-listers. He's a world champion.
Mad,
He should. It just shows the worth of a world title nowadays. You can be a world champion, he's good, and he deserves it. And looks like on any of the boxers, but the fact that he still needs those learning fights. So you do need a little test here and there. Not every fight can be stellar until you proved yourself to be stellar. But still, we're talking. I would say about Devin Haney. I can't remember the last time I've seen a fighter so dominant in a fight, hold so much. I've seen fighters hold a lot when they've been up against it, and they've been second best in up close. But he was winning the exchanges in close. He was dominating almost in every department. Yet he was massively looking to hold everything. I think it's muscle memory. Every time he throws a shot, he's looking to slip inside and hold you and smother your work, which isn't bad. But a stronger referee would have took a point or two away from him last night, and then that would have made that fight all of a sudden, certainly on the judges' scorecard, a very, very close call.
We said the same thing about Deontay Wilder as well when he was WBC champion early days, and it's like this guy holds the green and gold belt at heavyweight, but we're still saying he could do with a couple of, he won the belt by beating Stavern, and then it's like, but he's not ready for him, and he could do with a couple of learning fights when he was something like 30-0 and the WBC heavyweight champion. It's just, you're right, it's just the way of the belts now. Where it is slightly different with Haney is just how young he is, because I just feel like, although that being said, you could make the same argument for all of them. I mean, apart from Lopez, whose CV already is ridiculous, and that is based on the fact that he won them all against Lomachenko. So now he's sort of there. He's got a mandatory now, and then after that, you can't. Well, the problem comes is, how do you sell a fight against Lopez and a second-rate opponent now, or just a second-tier opponent? It's hard, isn't it? And I guess that's why we end up with two people fighting 2 times a year, even though they're 15-0 and 22 years old.
It's hard when they want crazy money. That's the problem. And I think we see a few of Lopez now with his fight going on Triller, and him getting maybe 6 million or whatever. Well, I don't know what he'll getting paid 6 million. He won't take that home, of course, because he'll have to give a chunk to Top Rank. But that's it. That's his base mark on how much he's worth. So he's not going to want to take any fights. I think you mentioned something about Devin Haney. We could have another 10 years of Devin Haney, and we could. But the reason I would just say take the fights now, and I mentioned with Josh Taylor, just take the fights now while they're there. You don't need to stay around for 10 years. A legacy doesn't have to be longevity. For some it is, but if you're longevity, then you're not having stellar fights every time. You're just not. It's impossible. So almost impossible. So that you can be around for a 4-year career at the top level is a long time. It's less now than it used to be because they're only boxing twice a year, as you said, so it's less. But if you can really punch it out for 2 or 3 years, you can earn enough money, cement your legacy as a fantastic fighter. You don't have to go up and down the weight searching for every belt that's around. And I think that's what it used to be. So you get to the top, and it was really the story was the journey to the top. Once you got there, you had 2-3 hard fights at the highest level, because every fight was hard. And then only the greatest of great fighters stayed along a little bit longer. The rest of them retired, defeated at the end, of course, but are happy that they achieved, for most boxers, the unachievable. I think it's slightly changed now, but I don't think we should be looking for people to stay around for 10 years. No, it's a hard career. Let's just get in there, have it hard while you're young, and you can absorb all that toll on your body whilst you're young. And then get out before you get too old, because the longer you're in the sport, the more those punches take an effect. I think that's my worry. I don't want to go on to this now. Everything was rosy, but I like to have a moan, so I like to get into that little mode of this moan about boxing. But you couldn't moan about last night. I thought he boxed really well. The holding was a little bit too much, but he boxed really well. He got with a good shot. But again, and he did hold and run in the 11th round. But isn't that what you're supposed to do when you're hurt, to recover? No. I think that he played the smart move in the last round. He did admit he was hurt, but he was, and he did the right thing until his legs got underneath him again, and then he skated away from me a clear, conclusive winner.
I think what we're seeing is clear improvements with every fight. Like his jab last night looked like sensational, and he was. I never really thought of him as a really, really top level jabber, but that was quality work, and the amount of times he went to the body as well, again, just shows you that he's maturing. So that's what I mean. I don't think there's any mad rush with him, but in this world there is. And it's interesting you mentioned the money there, because what I would love to see, a bit of sort of old school promotion, and I believe I can sort of remember it when they did it with De La Hoya before he boxed Felix Trinidad, sort of 6 months before, however many months before, they both boxed on the same card. And it was a big build up, you know, they both win and then they go ahead. I'd love to see like Garcia Fortuna, that fight when it finally happens. And then Haney, Comey, or Haney, whoever it might be, the two of them win in this big card where they're both there and it's all week. And then it becomes this super fight when they do it together. But how can they possibly afford now to put them both on the same card? They just can't. I mean, it would make no business sense. I mean, a lot of the DAZN stuff doesn't really seem to make any business sense, actually, with the prices we pay and the amount of money they pay the boxers. But it's a shame that I don't think that would happen. And I think that would be amazing for both of them. And it would be the perfect way to build their fight. But it's a bit pie in the sky. But I was just thinking about it last night.
Yeah, it's a worry that they just call each other out forever. That's what's happening, you know? And then the fights never get made, whatever reason it really is. But the real reason usually boils down to the people running their careers, whether managers or promoters or TV companies, don't want them to fight because they have two top of the bills that can run parallel to each other. That you can advertise his fight while he's fighting and back and forth until they get fed up or until one of them looks like they're not so good and they become the B-side. Then you put them together. No, that makes business sense, of course. But as boxing fans and as the sport of boxing, these fighters need to fight each other possibly earlier, and also it's better for them, for their legacy. Boxers, that's all they mention now is their legacy and what they want to leave behind, and fighting in those competitive fights where there's a real risk of losing, then that really bolsters your cementing your name in the history books, of course.
Surely what we need is Eddie Hearn with a giant check a la Frampton Quigg.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a bit bigger this time.
It's a weird one. Go on, carry on.
No, carry on. Sorry.
It's a weird one with them because they boxed a lot as amateurs. I think they boxed 4 or 5 times or something like that, and they both beat each other and stuff. But it was notable that Ryan Garcia, and I mean, we're speaking about Ryan Garcia now, he's got his own things that he's dealing with outside the ring now, so we don't know how long that's going to take, whether he seems to be back in training. But it was notable after he beat Luke Campbell. Haney was there in the crowd, and he didn't sort of call him out or anything like that. He said he wanted Davis, and Davis is doing, again, he's up at 140 now. He's doing his own thing. It sort of seems to be a slightly different. So I don't even know if they both want it. It's a weird one, isn't it? And it's kind of, we just sort of imagine they do and assume they do. But yeah, it's not like Frampton Quigg where there was no other options. But I think we do need a big check. It might be time.
And that's the problem with world titles, because like Garcia is the interim, maybe. Who knows what he is for the WBC title, which is owned by Devin Haney. There should be Lopez's, but who cares about that? But it's Devin Haney's, and so he should won that fight to become a world champion. But because the other 3 belts are tied up with Lopez, who's on a different network, so that's never going to happen, to be honest, in the foreseeable future. So you just think that he has to be pushing for that fight. That's the fight you want. As much as it's all about money, and I understand that, but as a boxer, as much as you want to earn all that money, when you were 10, you were boxing. When you were a kid, you were boxing. The money was never an issue. It was being a champion, and or a world, whatever that be, a world champion for most. And so you get that close to becoming that, to achieving your child ambition, then surely that should be your only focus, because that is big money. And I understand, you're going to argue about, I want an extra $500,000 or $1 million, and understandable, but you're so close now, and that's a fight that surely that's got to be the easiest fight that should be made in boxing. One of the easiest fights. They're both under the same postal banner, the same TV company. They're in the same organization. They both one holds a major belt, one holds a pretend belt. But it just makes they should just be gelling, and that fight should be announced last night. That's, to be honest. If Garcia is okay, of course, in health and mentally wise, then that fight should be announced last night. That's what they should be doing, fighting on the same show and stepping in the ring together and announcing that fight for the show in 4 months' time. That's how it should be done.
Is there a question over Haney's power at all? Maybe compared to the other ones in his division?
Yes, probably, but I think it's a case that he doesn't hold his feet, doesn't set his feet, because you can see because he looks to hold every time he throws a shot. So he's always thinking a step ahead. Sometimes your brain can get in your way, where you're thinking, no, as you're throwing the shot, you're already either preparing or thinking about the next move, whether that's another punch or to move in a position to throw again, or for his case mostly to dip inside and hold. So I think if he eliminates thinking too many steps ahead and just concentrates on throwing the punch, then I think he has the power to hit you. And also he smothers his work at times. So when he does hit you, he gets a little bit too close. I think just now and again. But there's only little adjustments that I think that he certainly can punch his weight. But yeah, he's in a weight where Teofimo Lopez, if he hits you, you're in trouble. He just put it this way: if that was Teofimo Lopez who hurt Haney in the 10th round, that 11th round is the worst 3 minutes of his life. That's a guarantee. But he's clever, and I think what Declan pointed out was the jab was something you don't really you can see that he throws a jab, but you don't really notice that he's a great jabber. But it was evident last night that our left hand was a thing of beauty and really controlled everything.
There were mixed results for the Brits on the undercard. Chantel Cameron defended her world title with a 4th round stoppage. Martin J. Ward stopped himself in the 7th round. But I just wanted to pay homage almost to Nonito Donaire, who stopped Nordine Ubali in the 4th round to become world bantamweight champion at the age of 38, which has to mean, gentlemen, there is hope for us all.
Well, maybe you two, but the ship's sailing me, boys. I'm afraid.
I don't think I'll make that weight these days. To be honest, mate, I'm not sure I do. I mean, on Donaire, like I've never ever heard a bad word said about him in boxing by anyone, whether that's a journalist, promoter, manager, other fighter. Not a single bad word. There's only a few people like that in boxing, and he.
Thanks.
I mean, yeah, there's one. But I don't know. The thing is with Donaire, he became not an opponent, but he was clearly brought over with Frampton and then with Inoue and stuff like that. And it was like, he's a legend. Can you go and beat a legend? And I think that was what was the score with Ubali yesterday. And I saw a couple of people were really tipping Donaire because he's got that power and that left hook. And I mean, he's still got it. It's obviously the last thing to go. I was so happy to see that as well. Like, without no disrespect to Ubali, but that, I mean, and what a finish as well. And it's just classic Donaire. It's just rolling back the years. And you're right. As we get older, it's so nice when you see someone who was sort of written off as past it roll back the years like that. Quality, and he's back. And now he's still in the. I'm not still in the mix. He's got a belt, and he's going to go again.
And maybe we get the rematch with the Japanese fella.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't even know who he is. Inoue, yeah, he's not very good, so I forgot his name. No, but either way, and bantamweight is weight, isn't it? As much as he's gone up and down, around super bantam. We went to feather, and he was still good, but I think he just lacked a little bit of sting in some of his shots. But bantam, super bantam, he's a force. And you're right, the power's the last to go, but it's not just out of him, it's the timing. So I can't even remember when the Rigondeaux fight was, when he boxed Rigondeaux. And you thought he's had a great career. He was top 1 or 2, wasn't he, pound for pound in the world at the time. And you thought, what a great way to go out. Back then, that got to be 7 years ago, maybe, I don't know. But you just thought, yeah, it is. And you thought, what a way to go out. He's had a Hall of Fame career already. And he's lost to just a maverick of a fighter there in Rigondeaux. And that's not a bad way to end your career. But he just we talk about fighters reinventing themselves, and there's been a few who've done it really successfully. But he's got to be right up there with some of the best. Every time you write him off, I think he's past his sell-by date. He comes back with a fantastic performance. And last night again, I can say, Ubali's good, by the way. He's not getting an all-time great, but he's a good fighter who's fast and competitive and tough. But the power of Danair is something that's got him out of trouble so many times, and last night was one of them. And Declan's right now; he's back in the mix with big names and big fights again in what is also a competitive division.
That left hook, though, thing of beauty. And if for anyone who hasn't seen the Montiel knockout, the left hook one where he's on the floor, it's just chilling that a little guy like that can do that to another human. So go and watch that if you haven't seen it yet.
Good advice. And someone else looking to come again, if you like. Daniel Dubois next weekend against Bogdan Dinu in his first fight with trainer Shane McGuigan. We will be back next weekend to talk through that one. Dubois' first fight, of course, since his stoppage defeat by Joe Joyce last year. I do hope you can join us then. Until then, goodbye.